started. Welcome everyone to tonight's session of Sunday Night Thrive. We're really thrilled to be here this week with Val Spies, who is the director of Lotus Pond Yoga in Florida, in the Tampa area. She's a wonderful yoga teacher, trained extensively with Kripalu Yoga, and also leads a lot of retreats and events and teacher trainings and workshops, and is a dedicated yogi. Welcome, Val.
Oh, thank you, Andrew. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah. And Val will also be leading a workshop later on this year, 2 workshops in fact, and we'll also touch on those a bit as well this evening. We're also,
right. Yeah, we're so happy to come to the Art of Living Center. We come twice a year, every year for several years now. And it's such a fantastic experience every time.
Nice. And we love having Val's group here. They're a very fun group.
Yeah, we have a good time.
Yeah.
Deep studies and a good time as well. Yeah.
So tonight, Val's joining us from Florida, and then we also have Mary Walker back in the studio with us. So we'll start off with Mary and a little musical rendition to kick us off this evening.
All right, I'm going to sing a bhajan in Sanskrit. I'm going to be playing it on this instrument. It's called an auto harp. A lot of people ask me what this is. It's a harp, and you basically make chords by depressing buttons and using these little finger picks.
Nice.
So Sanskrit is it's a language. It is the oldest language known to mankind. All the other languages stem from Sanskrit, and so that's what I'll be singing in. And it's call and response. So it's really nice. It's an ancient language. It resonates really deep and in our nervous system, and it's really uplifting. So if you can try and sing along, you can repeat after me now.
So if you're at home and you feel like singing, you're welcome to.
You can sing. This is a Ma Bhajan song.
Thank you, Mary.
That was lovely, Mary.
Yeah, Mary's so talented.
It makes me feel like I'm on the mountain again to hear Mary's lovely voice. Yeah,
Oh, thank
breath of
you.
fresh air. Yeah, it's such a special part of our retreats to go to the kirtan in the evening and hear all the beautiful singing and musical instruments, and it's just so incredibly uplifting for our students. Especially after a full day of training and practice and all sorts of beautiful experiences, to complete the day with the kirtan, with the singing is so spectacular.
Yeah. And Val, you've been teaching yoga for so many years now. What's one thing if you could look back on all those years and say, this is something that's really come out of the practice of yoga, what would that be for you?
Yeah, and there's so much that has come forth from these studies of yoga. I think as I'm studying, as an adult only for about over 20 years, which is really a pretty minimal compared to many. But the most significant thing that's come forth to me in these studies is the comfort with knowing, becoming familiar with a path, to find that the longing that we all feel within, to be able to find words to describe how we access those parts of our lives of beauty and peacefulness. Yoga provides us with those words and the pathways to find that peacefulness, because people can talk about it all they want, but you need some practical studies, some good practices to help you find those spaces. And yeah, I'm so happy to find the pathway and the words, because we always want those words.
Nice. And
Yeah.
speaking of words, your upcoming retreat is called the Radiant Hearts.
Right.
Could you share a little about the practice and the idea behind that?
I think these studies are so vast and all originated in India, but spread through China and all around the world. So we have a concept that is so broad that when you bring it all together, when you look at all the history and the writings and the teachings over thousands of years, the one thing, no matter what country you're in, no matter what year you're living in, the one thing that we can all connect to is the feeling of the heart. And so that's like our lifeline, that's what the same thing that we can all relate to around the world over the years. And so when you get down to it, the studies of yoga, the practices of the asana practice as well, are opening up the heart and providing us a pathway to that connection of the self, of the universal self. And we all yearn for it, whether we can label it or not. We all yearn for it. But when we want to really explore these studies, we find that the purification can be related to the heart, the purification that moves us away from all the distractions and the cravings and the yearnings, when we move to that openness of the heart. So the heart radiates when we reach that space that's even an inkling close to the purity, because we're just working, we're just studying and practicing. Yeah.
And in your classes, how do you connect the asana practice, the standard physical asanas, with that journey to the heart, to clearing the heart, to finding that heart space?
Yeah, well, there's a few things. One is relating to the chakras, the energy centers in the body. And of course, the Anahata chakra is the heart
Mm.
energy center. So a lot of these asana practices open up that area of the heart and of our being. And so physically, emotionally, energetically, we're opening that space through our practice. And some of it starts with just the simple, opening of the shoulders, lifting and opening of the heart. But then also in the asana practice, you start to learn about practicing from different ways: the intelligence of the body, the intelligence of the mind, the intelligence of the heart. And what we're hoping to accomplish is to unite all those, as yoga is union, to bring all of that together. So for example, BKS Iyengar says that extension comes from the intelligence of the mind, and expansion comes from the intelligence of the heart. So you start by understanding the different levels of the practice, then it becomes easier to meld them all into one. And that's where we find the unification. That's where we find the ease and the peacefulness, when we can find that balance. Yeah.
And what are some obstacles that you see that people come with to the practice, to a class? And how do you see the path as a way to help deal with those?
Well, so, before I studied yoga for so many years, but for many years of my adult life, I was also a corporate manager, and pretty high level corporate manager. And so I experienced what we're all going through, and that is that we're constantly persuaded to shut down around the heart in our work, whether it's through a protective mode, because people sometimes do want to cause you harm in one way through your work, or your pride, or whatever that may be. You run into that quite a bit. So you start to build a protective shield, right? So when my students come in to classes, I see that that wall of defense can be there for them, whether it's from harm from a relationship, or even through work, or even through the traffic they just drove through, and being offended by someone's words in the store. Any of those things that start to persuade you to close down around the heart. So when they come out of class, then just from a simple yoga practice, the asana practice, for an hour and 15 minutes, hour and a half, they feel a remarkable difference by the end of the practice. And that's what's so beautiful about these studies, is that it's a wonderful experience to be in a class. And on top of it, you have these, the wonderful outcome of just opening up a little more and a little more. It's like a lotus flower blossoming, right?
Sure.
So, yeah.
And you mentioned earlier that, in a sense, there's a universal tradition of coming back to the space of the heart.
Right.
And is there a particular, passage or something that you refer to that really kind of brings us up for you, that you would like to share?
Oh, there's so many, really. I love, my books are all just, marked on almost every page from my studies. But I would like to read to you from the Chandogya Upanishads, which is speaking of, in the city of Brahman is a secret dwelling, the lotus of the heart. And within this dwelling is a space, and within that space is the fulfillment of our desires. What is within that space should be longed for and realized. As great as the infinite space beyond is the space within the lotus of the heart. Both heaven and earth are contained in that inner space, and both fire and air, sun and moon, light, lightning and stars. Whether we know it is in this world or not, or know it not, everything is contained in that inner space. There's also, I'd like to just read a little bit.
Yeah, please.
Of Sri Sri as well. Okay. So Sri Sri says that bliss cannot be understood and is extremely difficult to achieve. After many lifetimes, you finally achieve bliss, but once achieved, it's even more difficult to lose. And all that you seek in your life is bliss, that divine union with your source. And everything else in the world distracts you from that goal. There are a million things to distract you from that goal in so many ways, so many unexplainable, incomprehensible ways of not coming home. So there's that reference that you just mentioned of coming home and how we're distracted. Cravings and aversions make your heart hard. There is no use being polite in your behavior if you are rough in your heart. The world does not care how you are inside. It will only see your behavior, but the divine does not care how you are outside. He only looks within. Never let even a small amount of dislike or craving reside in your heart. Let it be fresh, soft, and fragrant like a rose. That's from Celebrating Silence.
Nice.
Yeah. So many beautiful writings to refer to, and we do that a lot. We do a lot of readings in our workshops. I think it's a very important part. It's not just our representation. We want to really look at these teachings that were written so long ago. Some, 2,000 years ago. Some in the past 20 years with the Sri Sri, and so, yeah.
Nice.
It's always beautiful at the Art of Living Center when, after the evening kirtan, when they do a reading. Yeah.
And
Some
this,
knowledge.
this series was actually in part inspired by this idea of taking a little time in the evening to kind of reflect on the practice, on the path, on kind of coming together in that spirit.
Yeah, what a beautiful thing to do every evening. Yeah, so love that. Yeah.
So that Chandogya Upanishad, it's interesting. Sometimes there's a hurdle for people to cross from these ancient texts to apply it to my life today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, what do you make of that, and what do you see as kind of a path to connect the two in your studies with your students?
Well, there are many ways for us here in the U.S. to look at those translations, to read and learn also from our Western teachers, so that they're teaching us. And Sri Sri does such a beautiful job of answering questions from everyone where they're asking, well, how does this apply to my life now? How does this apply to my life now? And there are also lots of wonderful books by psychologists, psychoanalysts who are merging the psychology as well as philosophies of the Eastern and the Western studies. And we refer a lot in our teachings to The Wisdom of Yoga. It's a beautiful book by Stephen Cope. And he takes the Yoga Sutras that were written 2,000 years ago and applies the philosophy of the psychology of those writings to people's lives today. And they can be so simple. He bases a lot of it on the Bhagavad Gita, which if you read it first off, you may think, what does this mean? But then when you have it delivered to you by teachers, you realize, oh, this is very practical knowledge, as well as leading you on this spiritual path. It's giving you a realistic way to start on that path with some of the basic concepts of doing good work and not getting attached to the results. Well, there's a really basic concept that we can all understand and follow, that will lead us in the direction of understanding the more ethereal practices and experiences. So we start there. We start where we are. We're working. What kind of work are we doing? Is it good work? Is it are we working in our dharma? Are we working in support of everyone around us? You know, is it selfless work where we are in support of everything around us, right? So very basic concepts to start with that open you up to all those other beautiful experiences of moving on the pathways of spirituality. And there's so many different pathways that are available to everyone. You know, it's not secluded just to one group or another. We're all looking for the same thing. We're all yearning that that feeling of peacefulness, that open-heartedness, where we're not afraid to love and receive love. That we live in a way that's authentic and genuine, so that we are not so distracted by our misbehaviors, but that we're supported by our actions, you know?
Nice.
Yeah.
And what do you see as kind of the obstacle or an obstacle in people's lives today from realizing, from finding that serene space of the heart?
Well, I think there's not a whole lot around us in our society today that is asking us to make decisions from the heart. You know, the decisions more should be made. I mean, we're outright prompted to make decisions from greed, right? In what we see in advertisements, in what we see in behaviors, and we're prompted to move toward greed rather than generosity. We're prompted in our lifestyles today to not be honest, to not be truthful. We're prompted to grasp at things and always want more than what we have in the greediness. But we're also prompted oftentimes to be just dishonest. So we have to work at moving away from that, even though it's surrounding us. But it's those prompts and those responses that we may give to those prompts where we follow that untruthfulness, we follow that greediness or unkindness, and then it's all those distractions and that bad feeling that you get when you look in the mirror that keeps you from finding real peace in the heart, you know, and starts to close you down around your experiences. Yeah, when you start to shut down, you shut down. A lot of things fall behind that door when you shut down, you know, from the radiance of the heart. When you start to close off that radiance, yeah, it's like closing all the windows and shutting the blinds and saying, no, I'm not looking at the beauty of this life. Right?
So the beauty of this life is there. What would you suggest to someone who wanted to kind of come towards that, in contrast from these prompts that we get from the media and stimulation around us?
I should practice yoga.
Practice yoga.
Yeah, the asana practice is a great way, it's a great segue into meditation. Everything that you do in the asana practice is preparing you for meditation. So meditation is the ultimate practice that will take you to more peacefulness, that not just while you're sitting in meditation and you're able to find those little moments of bliss, not just in that, but then how you weave it into your life. How you start to be more compassionate, because you understand how to move away from the more distracting thoughts, and you follow that practice in your everyday life. It plays in the background, even though you're not sitting right in meditation all day long. If you have a good practice, then the residue of that meditation can stay with you as you move through the other things that you have to do in your life. It's like this wonderful music playing in the background, right? Like the kirtan. Yeah.
I think you brought out a really interesting point. Sometimes, people think of meditation as a retreat, or it could be seen as running away from problems. But like what you're saying is that it's not so you can go and feel peaceful while you're sitting for a few minutes, but living that through your day, weaving that, as you said,
right.
It's a very, it's another option.
It is. And I think it is important to initially do retreats or do them, a few times during the year, because we need that extra help to establish a practice. Sometimes it's a little hard in all your busyness of the day to really get a good practice going. You go away on a retreat, you realize, oh, this is good, this is important, this is what's going to help me through the rest of my week. So you start to prioritize it. But sometimes it takes going up to a beautiful mountain like Heavenly Mountain, and just stepping away from everything, being in the present moment, enough to explore. And then when you go home, you have something really beautiful to take with you that you can weave throughout your life. But for many people, just trying to do a meditation for 15, 20 minutes a day and struggling with it, they spend a whole lot of time trying to get there and not a whole lot of time being there in that meditative state. So I think it's a great idea to go away, get there, find the pathway, make it solid for yourself, and then you go home with something really wonderful. I think it's just an important piece. I think it really takes more than a few days to fall into that space. Yeah. When you go on a retreat, you're in the present moment because you've set everything else aside. And that's what it takes. At home, yeah, you can do it. You can develop a good meditation practice, but sometimes you need a starter to get there, right? And then you need a reminder too, to go back for silence and meditation and all those beautiful things. Yeah.
Oh, very true, very true. It's almost like, connecting to connect sometimes requires that we disconnect.
Absolutely. We have to. And with technology today, it's hard to disconnect. It's, your phone's pinging at you all the time, and you're really expected to be on all the time. Yeah. And so it's great when you go up into the mountains and you say, oh my, there's not very good reception. Even though you can get reception up there, you may just want to say, and sometimes you can't in the mountains, so so it allows you to step away.
It's almost like we're giving ourselves permission to disconnect for some time and take responsibility for the other parts of our life that don't ping us.
I know. And once you establish that, it becomes easier to tell people around you, oh no, I need this time now. I need this time, this quiet time. I need time for meditation. Once you become solid in the practice, you can more comfortably say that to people, and they'll start to understand. It's just in the beginning, it's a little hard. You know?
For someone maybe that's new and considering this, how do you have that conversation with friends or family or coworkers? Could you share a couple of pointers there?
Right. Well, the good thing is that I think one of the most beautiful things about people practicing yoga is that it's recognizable. You
Hmm.
know, people start to see that you look healthier, you look a little more radiant, you seem to deal with things in a more peaceful way. You know, they say people who meditate, obviously, you're going to have stressful situations and feel stress in your body. But when you have a solid meditation practice and you have developed that part of the brain and your nervous system is accustomed to the meditation, then yes, you would have the same stress in a serious situation, but meditators can recover more quickly
Huh.
and move into wisdom. So yes, you feel the initial stress, but then you know how to move right through that, right?
Hmm.
So that's what they have discovered. But so I'm saying that because people automatically start to see a difference in you.
Huh.
And they're interested in that difference. Like, okay, so what have you been doing? You know, been practicing yoga and meditation. So that opens the door for them to be a little more receptive to, oh, and then you need to do what? You're not going to be on your phone for 2 hours? Right, you should try it. You know, it's
Yeah.
really wonderful. So, yeah, and then they say, maybe that is possible. Maybe I could do that too. So yes, realistically, sometimes people will not appreciate that you want some time to yourself. But in the long run, they usually see that they like the difference they're seeing in you. They like those qualities that it's bringing to you, and they want a little of that too. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of my students, we've been graduating teacher training students for 14 years now from my school. And many times, especially with school teachers, I've had school teachers tell me that not only does their attitude change through the asana practice, the meditation practice, the breath work, the pranayama, not only does their attitude change, but the students' attitudes in their class, if they're a teacher, all start to change as well. So yeah, I've heard that so many times from teachers, that the whole essence of the room starts to change. And I think we see that on many levels, not just in a classroom. So that's nice. I think we need that these days, right?
So
In
true.
classrooms and and all around.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful practice, and it's such a good practical practice that can help us in our lives.
Yes.
I believe in it. I left my corporate career to run my schools because of that, because watching people struggle with stress in their lives and not having anything to anchor onto, you know, is just going to work and coming home and feeling stress and not tapping into bliss in any way, that seeing that over and over again, I realized that I needed to move into a different phase of my life so I could open the door for many people to experience life in a more fulfilling way. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Could we actually go through a meditation on this session tonight?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we can do that.
Can we do that?
Yeah.
And just before we launch into that, I wanted to remind everyone joining us tonight that Val will be leading a beautiful workshop coming up in the spring on the radiance of the heart. It will involve yoga asana, so the meditation practices, the things that she's been sharing with us tonight, and looks forward to being a beautiful experience.
Yeah. We also will be having a sound healing meditation
Nice.
with a gong and everything. You know, it's always nice to have these extra things to help us move into meditation, and that's what seals our yoga, our asana practice. That's that's where we really move into that special space. Yeah. So I'm teaching with a co-teacher that's just a fabulous asana teacher as well. So it's when you work hard in your asana practice that then you can really appreciate the quiet and the beauty as well.
Yes.
So we'll start our meditation.
Okay, great.
All right. So this always starts with moving into the present and just dropping away all the other thoughts of the day and energies of the day and simply moving within. Okay. So we start that with the breath, with pranayama. So notice the breath first and just notice if the breath is short or interrupted. See if you can smooth the breath out. Inhaling, bringing the breath deep into the low lungs and letting it fill up into the rib cage and up into the chest. And exhaling, letting everything go. Nice, deep, full inhales. And long exhales, feeling the shoulders float downward and the eyes settle. Swami Kripalu says, when you meditate, close your eyes and draw your senses inward. Then imagine you can enter the chambers of your heart. Resting there for a moment, sense the presence of an all-abiding love. Allow the breath to quiet your awareness. You'll find love eternally present in the human heart. With the eyes closed, allow yourself to move into that space of quiet. The mind wanders, you bring it back to the breath. Without disturbing that feeling of quiet and peacefulness, making a slow transition back, gently opening the eyes, allowing yourself to find that space in between. Open the eyes fully. Perhaps start to roll the shoulders, coming back. So the transition is slow. It's like an awakening. And when you return, you carry that quiet with you. Opening your eyes. Namaste.
It was very nice, Val. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for joining us tonight and for leading us through that. And for anyone that would like to learn more, I encourage you to. There's a link in the comments, in the chat box about the upcoming retreat. Anything else you'd like to share about that program, Val?
Well, I guess I've already been saying how wonderful it is to take the time. It's worth it. It's worth it to step away and move into that space where you can open up just a little more and start to seek out that your purpose in life, your dharma, your how you can move into more bliss, more moments of bliss in life. And you need these experiences to come to you through nature, which is what we have in the top of the mountain at Art of Living. Nature is one of our most wonderful teachers, and we're just amidst nature and the sky with the clouds right there with us. And I think that combination of the asana practice, the walking on those beautiful paths from your room to the beautiful dining hall to the classrooms, doing the yoga practice at sunrise, and then eating a fabulous, healthy breakfast and lunch, and all these things together start to create a purified environment for you to really feel the expressions of the heart, to let that space be more radiant for you. And I'm so thankful to centers like Art of Living that provide that environment for us. So thank you for your hard work, Andrew, as well.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see you and your group up here again.
Yeah, I will be there April 27th, real soon.
April 27th.
Right.
And wishing everyone a lot of bliss. Hope you can find some bliss in your week ahead. And welcome to join us next week for Sunday Night Thrive at 7 p.m.
Oh, thank you so much for letting me be a part of it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Val.
Okay. Good night.
Good night. Namaste, everyone.
Good night. Namaste.